Hi everyone, it's MA here. And I just thought I'd pop on and do a little video about the whole decluttering conversation and what I'm calling the middle path, which is the path I'm on with my deck collection. Just a little background. At the beginning of 2020, I had 4 or 5 decks. And over the course of 2 years, I think, over 80, more like 90 passed through my home, a few of which I don't have anymore. I'm a tarot learner and a tarot enthusiast. I don't have a business. I don't plan to have a business. I don't, plan to build a brand. I'm here really just for the love of it. I do readings occasionally for people I know. They're mostly focused on creative projects. I call it, tarot for writers. I mostly read for other writers relating to creative projects. And that's where I'm at with this. So yeah, I went from, 4 to over 80 decks, and I still have most of them, and I don't really have plans to get rid of them anytime soon. And I think that's why I'm putting in this conversation the middle path. And I do want to say nothing anyone has been saying about getting rid of decks or, what is too many is at all triggering to me. I love the conversation, and none of it makes me think bad things about myself. And I know no one intends that, but I'm also not responding from that place. So I just wanted to make that clear. One thing I do find missing from some of those conversations as sometimes, so I'm not calling anything, I can't ever remember why I'm getting this vibe, but I would like there to be, and there may very well be, and I'm not picking it up, but let's not forget what we have been through over the last 2 years. And if you maybe bought a few too many decks, all right, I'll speak from the eye. If I bought a few too many decks, and that was one of my coping mechanisms, I think I just have to say that's okay. And, it's been rough. It's been rough. And, we've been through collective trauma. We still are in many aspects of a lot of stuff going on in the world. And to the extent, I can do better and find healthier ways to manage that's great. This was not a bad way in the grand scheme of things. Buying a few too many tarot decks was really not a crisis for me. I, will caveat that by saying that is somewhat a position of privilege because, I kept my job through COVID. I'm financially stable. So, it was not a hardship. Not that this makes me feel any better. This was a guilt thing for me, but I made a little bargain with myself that I had a spreadsheet, and whatever I spent on tarot decks, I was committed that year I had to donate at least twice that amount to charity. I don't know. That was a little bit of a bargaining chip on my part. So I don't know. I should have done that anyway, right? Or maybe put the tarot money in the pot too. So here we go. Yeah, from 4 to 80, and I will say not a huge number of mistakes. And first of all, I want to thank and point out that Kim at Abundant Life Tarot has a wonderful, course or series of videos and self-questionnaires and spreads on her website about curating your deck collection. And I was fortunate enough to find that pretty early on because I was subscribed to her channel, and that really helped me focus and ask myself questions about what kind of decks I wanted. Did I follow my own advice? Very frequently, no. And that's okay. But it really was a help in honing down what I was looking for in decks. So what I wanted to talk about mostly is the lessons that I was able to take away from that kind of explosion of decks and the lessons, good and bad, that I learned from them. So first of all, I have my first deck that I ever had, my Rider-Waite, on the table, because as part of this conversation, I don't want to be, flexing any decks. One of the gifts I am most grateful for the last 2 years of tarot collecting, tarot study, and tarot tube is I was able to allow myself to be the fool. And by that, I mean to have an interest in something and be able to walk in the door and just say, I'm interested in this and I know nothing, and listen to everyone and pop in and out of conversations and do my study and just be like a complete beginner mind. And I'm someone who's normally kind of armored, very tense about any kind of new situations where I don't already know everything, haha, as if I ever could. And that was like a real mind shift for me, and I'm very grateful for that lesson, just from the tarot in general. Another thing that came up, I was doing some shadow work in a group, and things get unearthed. This is not a terrible thing, but what did come up in some kind of, journaling stuff was about the ways that trauma, and I'm not talking major trauma personally, I'm talking, traumas of hardship, poverty, and strict religion can result in an internalized way of telling myself that I can't have something, as a way to relieve myself of wanting something I might not get. And that has been a very internalized subconscious editor of mine, because I grew up, my family position was to negate, if someone expressed something that was uncomfortable to other people in the family, or they were like, the odd person out, which, surprise, I was, get a response like, well, you don't really think that, or you don't want that. And to allow, as part of the deck collecting, to just allow that feeling to rise up and say, I think I want that deck. I can have that deck, and allow myself to obtain the deck and just recognize the whole process of desiring something and not shutting it down was really transformative. Now, of course, there are healthier ways to handle that going forward than buying more decks than I need, but I am grateful that work overlapped with the tarot, and that the tarot decks were kind of instrumental in working through that, or at least noticing that tendency. And I think being conscious of that tendency now is really placed to serve me better going forward in my life. A few other lessons. Kickstarter, here's what I learned. There's the mentality of, limited time offer. I realized that I could just not fall for that. I also, over the course of time, realized that by the time the actual deck came, frequently I was not excited about it anymore, whereas I had been excited when I backed it. And also, and I will say, like, with one exception, I'm very happy to have the decks that I backed, and I will eventually, work my way through them, but they kind of stockpiled in all at once. I also will say, for a few minutes there, I kind of fell in with some of the cool kids, not YouTubers, but, outside of that. And, there was a deck that I backed because, the word was, well, you have to. And, I should have known better, right? And I could have supported the creator and not obtained the deck. It's a deck that doesn't speak to me at all. So, live and learn. And I'm glad that I got to learn that about that particular avenue of deck obtaining is not really for me. Other lessons I learned, I bought 2 decks that I actively hate. There are a few decks that I bought where I looked at them and said, well, I really don't like blah, 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 but everyone else likes this deck, so I'm going to buy it anyway. And I should have known better. I probably did know better, but I learned 2 lessons, about intuition from doing that. One of them, and oh, by the way, the lessons contradict each other. One of them is that I should trust my intuition. And the other one is, it's a really good thing that I tested my intuition because I don't freaking know everything. This is what I was trying to learn from the Fool card. You know, I looked at something and said, well, I don't like blah, blah, blah. Well, I, as we learned, tend to do that for, you know, potentially for shadow reasons. So, you know, in most of the cases, for those decks, I was right, but I'm very grateful that I tested that water and didn't shut things down immediately because I think I know everything and I know I'm not going to like it. And again, they were mass market decks, you know, 20 bucks, 25 bucks. Again, not a hardship for me. If I had to pay someone to hit me over the head with that lesson, you know, that's fine. I'm okay with that. Well, we're not going to talk about the decks that I actively hated. I'll save that for another time. But in case I don't think I'm getting too woo like love and light here. But in case I am, trust me, there are some decks that I hated and I could rant for a long time over. Okay. Last thing that I have asked myself, and again, I have had a few Kickstarters come in all at once at a period where I had committed to work with other decks exclusively. And here's what I've been asking myself. Is it overwhelm or is it abundance? And can I just sit with maybe a few too many decks or a few too many new decks at once and appreciate that with gratitude and, you know, find a way, if I'm finding that the new decks, the decks I haven't worked through yet, if they're making noise, is there a way that I can keep them quiet for a few minutes? You know, keep them quiet while I work with the decks I've committed to and then come back to them when I'm ready. And so far, I think the answer is yes for that. So again, I think out of the 80 plus decks that came in, I've moved 8 or 10 out of my collection. I will say I think 3 or 4 of those were decks that came in Witch's Roots box, little mini decks that weren't to my liking at all, and I didn't choose them, so I passed those along right away. So overall, you know, I'm not planning to declutter quite yet. If I like something, it's going to stay, even if it's similar to something else. We're just going to see how we all get along for a little while, and I'm going to allow myself to say that I have abundance. I have abundance right now, and I'm going to be grateful for it and see if I can get myself in that mindset, and then I'll take it from there. I may change my mind in 3 months. We'll see. So that's it. Just everybody be good to yourself and do what's right for you. Bye.